Welcome to Carl and Heather Present,
the podcast where we dive into the insights, challenges, and humor of being married to someone who is nothing like you.
Are you ready?
Let's go.
Oh, don't you know it's Carl and Heather Present Marriage Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome from the rolling snow-capped hills of beautiful Franklin, Tennessee. After a stretch of spectacular guest interviews, we're back to how we started, babe. Just you and me, two married people presenting some hard-earned wit and wisdom to our growing community of listeners.
Wow. That was extra.
It was a little long.
It was.
A little chubby on the words.
You didn't even say our names.
Oh, we are Carl and Heather Carty.
And this is our podcast.
Our podcast is called Carl and Heather Present.
Right.
There is a little tag that says what it is.
That's true. That's true. But if somebody came in late, Carl and Heather Present, the podcast.
Yeah.
There you go.
That was pretty good.
Okay. Well,
Carl and Heather Present is a bona fide hit podcast.
Wow,
we're really doing good. We're cranking up the episodes, the listeners, the downloads, the likes, the subscribes.
let's dial it in.
Okay.
Let's check in.
All right. How are you doing?
I'm good. You mentioned snow-capped.
Yeah.
Hills. Snow-capped, that might be a stretch, but we did get snow. And I'm not a fan of the snow. In fact, I'm not a fan of winter. I've found myself spending more time, and maybe this is an episode we'll talk about later, about the clothing choices you make as you age in marriage. But I find myself, I have this pair of sweatpants that I love that have like bears on them, and my mom got them for us years ago. And I've painted in them. They're old. They're probably 15 years old. And I just can't wait to get in them at the end of every day. It's like the most comfortable thing I've worn. And it's just not a good fashion choice. Like I would never, show it to anybody but you guys. And it's just my favorite thing. But I find myself longing at the end of every day, like, man, when can I get in those bear pants? So fashion is not, I'm not doing good.
Yeah.
I'm not doing good. How about you?
It's winter time.
Yeah.
And so I feel like my personal grooming is maybe taking a hit. I just did get a haircut today.
Your hair looks great.
Thank you. But I remember a couple of days ago, I was getting out of the shower and you looked down at my feet and you asked me, "Are you growing your toenails out?" And that was your sweet way of saying, you need to brush up on your grooming. Or were you suggesting that that's a thing people are doing now?
I'm going to go ahead and say that I hope that trend doesn't catch on.
Are you growing your toenails out, babe?
I was thinking, I just looked down and I thought, okay, I have a choice here. I could just be like mean and say, hey, you need to cut them toenails, man.
Yeah. Which, for the next time, just for future, just go ahead and do that.
Just go ahead and say it. Like our friend David says, clear as kind.
Yeah,
So
I did get a pretty good laugh out of it, though.
But I just thought, how could I say it differently?
And I would just like to update you. I have taken care of it.
Yes. Okay, thanks. I'm sure our listeners love that. Love to hear that. So anyway, all right. Let's focus.
Today is the beginning of a 2-part parenting series that we're going to do. Part 1 is Get on the Same Team. Mm-hmm. Part 2 is Parenting Playbook. And these are just some things that you and I have learned about being married to each other that we need to, that we want to talk about, because being married is hard enough. You throw kids in there and parenting and all of the dynamics that kids bring up.
Yeah.
It's important to talk about on our marriage podcast. But first things first, we've not done this in a minute.
Yeah.
Listener comments.
I love it. Okay. All right. So let's start with YouTube from our episode, Deck the Halls, Not Each Other.
That was a good title.
Yeah.
Christmas episode.
At Karen Foster 1002 says, love the podcast. And the song is absolutely amazing. What song is she talking about?
She is talking about, we played a live version of that song called Two Things at the Same Time, Hurricanes and Harbor Lights.
Right, Hurricanes and Harbor Lights.
Is the name of the song.
Yep.
Our friend Shaylee Simeon was on. She was a guest that day. Mm-hmm. She played the song that she and I had written, and that song is out now. The full master recording is out everywhere. Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music. So that's cool.
That's cool. Well, and on Instagram, at Flock Mama says, downloaded and so excited. I have been waiting for this song ever since y'all previewed it at Worship House. So Worship House is a thing that we do monthly, and it's just a gathering where we have a night of worship, prayer, and testimony in our home.
Right here at our house.
Absolutely. So you can follow us on our socials to find out more about that. But
Josh Arnold on our Marriage and Married and Feeling Alone podcast. Josh Arnold 7484 said, love this. Thanks for sharing. Janet Bickley 9890 said, thank you so much.
With some hearts.
With some hearts.
Hearts emojis. I love emojis.
Thank y'all so much. That episode has really resonated with people. So Married, Feeling Alone, if you want to listen back to that one, that's a good one. If you like this podcast, please rate, like, and subscribe. Leave a comment on something that helped you or even something that you disagree with. If you think growing your toenails out is a great idea, let me know.
So gross.
We love to hear from you. There is no better endorsement for us than for you to share this ministry with your friends and family. So please share it out there.
Yeah.
And also, we're setting aside Monday mornings to pray for marriages. If you have a prayer request, no matter how big or small, please let us know. You can email us hi@carlandheather.com so we can be specifically praying for you and for your marriage. This is totally anonymous, totally discreet. We will not say anything about it on the podcast, but we will be praying about it with you. So
it's our honor. So, all right, babe, what are we talking about today?
Today begins a 2-part series. Parenting as a Team is part 1. That's what we'll talk about today. And then next week, we'll do Parenting Playbook. And so here we go. Give the people what they want.
Okay.
Unsolicited parenting advice.
There you go. Everybody loves that, right?
Yeah, who does it?
It starts from when they find out you're pregnant. So you said part 1 today, parenting as a team. What does that even mean?
Okay, so we speak at a lot of marriage conferences, and we'll have a husband or wife come up to us and ask us how to navigate parent challenges, and especially when the husband and wife feel like they're working against each other on parenting issues.
Yeah.
And I think the question is, why do we parent as a team? And why does it really matter? What difference does it make that you and I, you're parenting your kids one way, I'm parenting my kids, my way.
Right.
How important is it that we get on the same team and come to some places where we have common ground? Why does that matter?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think some of those would be like we have, the husband or wife come up and say they're constantly correcting me when I'm disciplining the kids, or I feel like I'm going this alone. I feel like I'm parenting on my own, or we came at it from different places.
Yeah.
Like
or you
I
grew up being parented by,
So I think, in every marriage we take on specific roles. And so it's important to understand that this is not just a role. Like, this is not like you cut the grass, I pay the bills, that kind of, it's not a role, but this is an equal say and influence that we have over our kids. And we do this together, and we do it, like we say, we do it better together.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so parenting as a team has to be that way. It can't be this idea of, mom said no, so I'll go ask dad. Or even, hey, dad, mom said I couldn't play on the PlayStation until I cleaned my room. And dad says, don't listen to her, go ahead.
Yeah.
It can't be that kind of thing. That can be divisive and have negative effects. And I think there's a couple reasons why it can be negative. So let's talk about those. So the first one I think is that the kids can become a wedge in our marriage.
Yeah.
So in Scripture, we are called to cleave to each other, which is not a word that we use like in our everyday. You don't really hear that anywhere else. Yeah. But in Genesis 2:24, it says, that is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united with his wife, or cleaves to his wife, and the two become one flesh. We're not called to cleave to our kids. We're not called to cleave to our work. We're not called to cleave to anything else except to each other. And when we put them before we put our spouse, it disrupts the natural order. The thing I love about God is He's a God of order. Mm-hmm. He's not a God of chaos. And there is a natural order to the way He created things. And it is that He is first. And then we became a family when you and I got married, not when we had kids. Mm-hmm. Kids don't make us a family. Our union together makes us a family. Okay. And so that is the natural order. So you come first before those kids. And one day, those jokers are going to leave us, hopefully, right? And that's the natural right order of things. They're going to walk right out that door. They're going to create their own families. and then it'll just be me and you. And if you've worked to be a teammate with just your kids, what happens is you've lost your teammate, and you look across the table and you're looking at an adversary, someone that you've been in conflict with or not even partnering with through all these years of raising kids. And I think that's why we see a spike in the divorce rate at this point, about the 25-year mark.
Yeah.
When you're finished raising kids, because these kids grow up and they're gone, and we've invested so much time and energy in parenting, and that's not wrong, but we've done that at the expense of investing in our marriage. If we pick, we're like, we'll invest in the kids before we invest in our marriage.
Yeah.
And then we look and there's a stranger. And so the kids can become a wedge.
Well, a lot of people will end up wanting to leave their marriage, and they will say something like, we're going to stay together for the kids.
Right.
But when the kids are not kids anymore,
Yeah.
most of the time, if that's the only reason you had to be together, there's not a lot of grounds for staying married.
Right.
So
Right.
I think what you're saying is you got to love your kids.
Sure.
No one's advocating for, like leaving them in a closet.
Right.
It's about figuring out the tension between how do you prioritize your marriage when it needs to be prioritized, and have your kids grow up in an environment where they feel loved and cherished, but they're not the center of the universe.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So kids become a wedge. That's the first thing. I'll talk about the next one.
Okay, so when we're not on the same page, it creates an unstable environment in our home.
Right.
We are most stable, all of us, married, single, when we have something that represents unity and oneness
Right.
in our lives. So when, the kids know when you and I are not good with each other.
Right.
There
Sure.
have been times where, even if you try to hide it or talk about it, if you live in a home where there's disunity, instability, mistrust, those things are breaking down, kids know it, and it erodes their trust in the environment that they're in.
Yeah.
Kids feel stable. It gives them a safe launching pad, and they're more likely to be brave, to try new things, and to branch out if they come from a home where there's a high trust and they feel safe there. They can risk doing some things out there because they know they got a safe place to land. So when the home is unstable, in other words, mom and dad are divided, kids will tend to play it safe. They need to create a safe environment outside of the home because for some reason it doesn't feel unified in the home. But when kids have an opportunity to see two people trust each other and work together to make the home a great environment for them, it tends to give kids some stability and security that they can then launch out, be courageous, take some risks in their own life.
Yeah.
So I do want to say this, though. There are a lot of people that listen to the podcast, and a big segment of the population who listen and who are out there, and those are divorced people who are remarried and now parenting stepkids.
Yeah.
The whole yours, mine, and ours thing.
Right.
That is a very complicated dynamic. If you're living it, you don't need me to tell you that. But all of a sudden, you introduce multiple influences, multiple sets of grandparents, multiple voices that are saying, hey, the bedtime at this house is this, but it's a different style at that. And
Right.
those can feel disruptive and cause division around parenting. But in some cases, it's out of your control to change it.
Sure.
You're not able to do that any longer. So different parenting styles and things like that. You're parenting, and also a lot of times you end up parenting someone who has the ultimate trump card to say that you're not my real dad anymore, or you're not my real mom.
Right.
So introduce that, into this parenting dynamic that we're talking about. You're trying to establish a new marriage. You're trying to establish a new thing, and you've got stepkids, and it's simply complicated. It's overwhelmingly complicated for a lot of people. So the best thing, we wanted to bring that up because there's a good resource.
Sure.
There's a guy named Ron Deal. Ron Deal has a lot of good marriage resources, but he focuses on how to make step families work. He has a book called The Smart Step Family. He also has a book called The Smart Step Family Marriage, where he breaks down some important and helpful strategies for parenting, staying married, having a healthy, second or third marriage and stepkids that are involved. So Ron Deal, the Smart Step Family Marriage is a great resource.
I love that, babe. So we don't want our kids to become a wedge in our marriage, right?
Right.
When we do put our kids before we don't parent as a team, it creates an unstable environment. And I want to say something about that, because what I think happens is that we put our kids up on this kind of pedestal, and oftentimes they cannot carry that weight. They were never meant to carry that weight of being at the center of it all. Actually, that weight was meant for Jesus.
Yeah.
He was the one. He is the one who is meant to be at the center.
It's the weight of glory.
Yeah.
Like we can't bear it, but we put our kids in this place where we glorify them.
Yeah.
And it ultimately will crush them.
And I think we can ask ourselves this of like, where do we spend our time, our resources, and our energy? Like where do we put our time, all of our thoughts, our affections, our resources? And it almost like you talk about this when you talk about worship. That's what leads us to what we worship.
Yeah.
And if we're honest, sometimes it's our kids. And I'm not talking about, hey, this is a season of newborn or whatever. We're keeping these jokers alive. What I am saying is that in our culture, it's become prevalent to do that and almost applauded
Absolutely.
to put those kids at the center. So the third thing I think we can do if we parent as a team and we're unified is it sets them up to repeat a pattern in their own marriage. What I mean by that is this works both ways.
Yeah. Right. It's like,
so if we're not unified, we can read parenting books. We can talk to our kids about what a healthy family looks like. But we've said this before, so much more is caught than taught, right? And so they're going to watch how we do it, and then they're going to model that. And we get to make our own adult choices, okay?
Right.
We're all adults. We don't have to, like, we can't live our whole lives blaming our actions on the way we were raised. At some point, we have to man up, woman up, and say, I'm an adult. This is my own choice. But so much what we bring in our marriage is what we've seen modeled. So we either work really hard to undo those things, the things that we don't like, or we just ignore those things that we don't like and we repeat the same patterns.
Yeah.
If we do that, our kids get that passed down. The same goes with good things. We have good things. We have good things that our parents taught us and that we bring into the marriage. And so we have those things passed down and we repeat those as well. But being a unified team sets them up to say one day, hey, mom and dad were a team. I'm going to go pick a teammate, like somebody who's a good teammate. And that's going to be good for me because I've seen that modeled. Now, for those of you going it completely alone, and we're not talking about like the blended family or step family, but I'm talking about you're married to someone and they're like, kids are on you, it's your job to parent, or I'm just doing my own thing. Maybe they're not a Christ follower. Maybe some of these principles that we talk about from the Bible are just like foreign to them, or they're just not interested.
Yeah.
I would say that we want to encourage you to keep going, especially on the days that it feels really hard. And I want to read Romans 12:18 that says, if possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Now, that word peace there doesn't mean the absence of conflict, because you kind of alluded to this earlier and talking about skating around issues or trying to, either really always engage in conflict or even just like saying, I'm not going to do conflict at all.
Yeah.
That's not what peace means.
Yeah, Jesus did not say, blessed are the conflict avoiders.
Right.
He said, blessed are the peacemakers. So a lot of times our growth, who we are, it comes at the places where there is conflict. There is tension, no pressure, no diamonds.
Right.
No resistance, no muscles. If we avoid leaning into some of these hard places, we are going to stay the same. And the conflicts that we tend to avoid are usually things that grow and fester and they get worse over time.
Yeah.
And so leaning into some of that tension is gonna be required of us, because I'm a broken person. Like I'm not parenting these kids perfectly. I'm not being the perfect husband. I mean, I have glaring flaws, and we got to talk about them. And the same for you. Like when we grow together in oneness, and when we grow together in unity, and you and I get on the same page, even though we're a lot of times on, coming at it from different ways.
Right.
But when we commit to getting on the thing, I think it sets our kids up for the potential for them to thrive.
Right.
Now, I will say this. Good parenting is usually a symptom of a marriage that's being worked on and invested in.
Yeah.
It's now having a good marriage or working on your marriage does not guarantee that you have the outcomes that you think are perfect for your kids.
Right.
Just because you and I are on the same page, every single one of our kids has just as much opportunity to grow up and become, just a mess.
Right. Sure.
They don't have to, grow up and all become, just perfect little contributors. And one's a missionary, and one's a pastor, and one's a nurse, and one's a brain surgeon. That doesn't. There's no guarantees on that stuff.
Sure.
I just think what we're talking about is that the environment that you grow up in, the people that you grow up around, it could potentially set you up as a kid, potentially to set you up as a kid, to be successful.
Right.
Marriage is a front row seat for little kids to watch two people do something hard together.
Yeah.
It's a front row seat to them to watch two people just argue with each other and cuss each other out and curse each other. Or it's a front row seat for them to try and bless each other, try and work together, trying to get on the same team. That's why being on a team as parenting as a team, as a married couple matters.
Right.
Because it's a front row seat for our kids to see,
Yeah.
how does this work? And we didn't talk about this, but like who you pick as a mate, that's really on my mind right now a lot.
Yeah. Right.
And I love you. I'm so glad you're my mate. I wish I knew what an important decision was when I was saying, will you marry me?
Sure.
I was pretty cavalier. You know what I mean? And maybe you were too.
Yeah.
We had no idea what was coming down the road. I thank God that we're blessed, but taking some time to show kids, hey, this is what it could look like. No matter what happens to these people, picking a mate and picking somebody who you want to be on a team with long term, boy, that's a big decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you mentioned parents and you mentioned kids and outcome. Your kids are not your report cards. We've said that before, and that's just the idea that we set them up to win. And I think about like our kids who play sports. They're a lot more likely in basketball to make a goal if they go out and have 100 shots a day. Does that guarantee they're going to make it? No. But they're set up to win if they go and practice.
Right.
And so for us, we want to set our kids up to win. We can read 1,000 parenting books, and that's great. But the best way we can set our kids up to win, I think, is what we're saying in all this, is to work on our marriage.
Yeah.
Right. And so there are principles. They don't come with a guarantee. We build upon these biblical principles, but that doesn't mean we're going to get certain outcomes. And this is where this all intersects with the gospel, okay? Because it would be nice if we had this like step-by-step plan that we followed. And funny enough, you and I are reading through the Bible, and the children of Israel, if you've done any reading, they kind of did have a step-by-step plan, and what we realize is we just can't follow it.
The book of Genesis is a story about a family that is an absolute hot mess. It is hot garbage.
Yeah.
As far as it comes to like getting on the same page with each other and
For sure.
siblings, it's a mess.
Yeah, and then they have rules that are set up for them, and they still can't follow those rules later.
No.
And so even if we had like step-by-step checklists, we're not going to be able to do it. And that's where the gospel comes into play, because Jesus intersects us where we are. Faith is the confidence of what we hope for and the assurance about what we don't see. And so this is a faith walk. This marriage and parenting, all of it. The Bible does not say we walk by sight, not by faith. It says we walk by faith, not by sight. And so we have to trust that the Lord is writing a story for us and he's writing a story for our kids. The best way we can set our kids up for success is to work on that story that he's written for us.
And maybe for the first time ever, to say yes to the gospel.
Yeah.
To be open to the power of God at work in your life. Maybe you are, facing divorce, facing some, maybe another broken relationship or another failed attempt at a relationship.
Yeah.
Is there something there that's saying, hey, you need a power that's greater than you to work in your heart, to open you up to the gospel, to receive Christ. So that's my hope. I love being on a team with you, and then there's some days we fight it out and we don't like each other.
Well, and that's how teammates are.
Yeah.
Sometimes we work well together, and sometimes we're like, hey, sometimes I'm a ball hog, and you have to say, hey, you're being a ball hog. Or sometimes you're not giving 100%, and I have to say that. Like we have to work together. But when we work together, it's good. It's really good. So, well, we're going to do part 2 of this next week. So you can listen next week and hear part 2. And that's the playbook.
All right.
That's our playbook. In the meantime, we mentioned marriage conferences. If you want to find out where we're going to be, if we're going to be in your area, you can go to carlandheather.com, check out our schedule, and you can see where we're going to be. Follow us there.
Thank you guys for listening to us. Join us next week for part 2. Together on Purpose.
Together on Purpose.
It's Carl and Heather.